bit earlier, so it was just.
I started the recording. Did you want to lead today, Nick?
That was a surprise. No, well, what would you? I'm not sure what the protocol here is yet. What your particular protocol is, so you'll have to.
Our protocol is that we sociocratically elect someone to be guide for the meeting.
Oh, that was sociocratic.
In other words, okay, so there's a document where people can fill in rules and the agenda. Oops, where is it? I'll put it in the chat. It's in the calendar entry, I believe.
Is it the RAM meet RChain active member meetings document? Is that the one?
Yeah, I thought we changed the title of that, but maybe not. That changed back maybe. People can fill in. The setup is just copying the template and put. Oops. Let me get up to today. Is this today? No, this is today. Sorry. People can put in their names here in advance. They can put in announcements or agenda other than that, there really aren't any norms. I mean, for a while, Alan was leader most of the time, and I guess Kyle was was doing the setups. But at this point, we don't have people here, so the topic, Nick, that you were bringing up was what again?
Okay, it was voting applications and our strategy for approaching the voting application marketplace or ecosystem, I suppose.
Okay. Does anyone want to add anything to that now? Of course, we can add anything at any time.
So other agenda topics, I suppose alongside that one, we've probably mentioned this one before, is just identity strategy again. It's what I think we talked about that before, but it's identity strategy. What would be, if there are identity apps out there, they often go alongside voting apps because you can't vote unless you have a reliable voter identity there. That's another another segment of dApps where we might want to have a strategy.
Okay. Anything else we want to put on here for now? And Nick, you'll be our guide.
Okay. Well, do you mean which is like chairman, just saying, taking you through?
Yeah. Making sure everyone has an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
And that we stay on topics that people are interested in talking about.
Okay. All right then. Well, then, are there any other topics which people would like to talk about?
Yes. Under the voting, let's talk about the naming that's going on for the RSong template project. I don't know what we're calling that yet. We talked about this a little bit last week.
Oh yeah.
I think that's separate. I don't know if that's necessarily related to voting.
Yeah, it's a wider digital content delivery template or platform or
Although I guess we could put the naming under there. We could
framework.
Well, yeah, I was thinking of putting it under voting because it was, we're actually voting on it now.
right.
But you're right. There is discussion about the subject at a higher level.
Yeah, because right now we're doing emoji voting now.
Well, and of course they proposed the ballot supposedly that we will somehow select a favorite or top 2 or 3 or whatever. But Ian was supposed to be coming up with some sort of scheme to allow us to do that in a fairly secure and democratic way. And so that's, those are some of the things that I've been thinking about that.
Okay.
Okay, so they're related, and partially. I think what Ian was going to arrange was the channels and management of the channels for emoji voting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. That's news to me. See, that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this.
Okay. Maybe I can talk about that. Maybe if you add in the governance committee discussions around voting that we've had so far. Yeah, around, particularly the thing which we're looking at the moment with Ian is a member survey. So that's one thing. It's, if you like, understanding better who the members actually are, what their main interests are, where they're coming from, so that we can hopefully better serve their democratic wishes, so we can know the right people to engage in conversation. And the other part of it was, we've got some, at the moment, some for what's called the topics of discussion process that governance committee is talking about. We have a sort of a workaround process, simple emoji-based voting, just using Discord at the moment. And the intention is in future, we make that a more robust on-chain process using the work that that you guys have been doing, whether that's using the robot behind it or whether it's whether we have a custom app developed on top of it, and we have on-chain voting, an on-chain voting contract, like the thing that Dan Connolly ported across from Ethereum. So but so I can talk a little bit about that stuff.
Yes, and while you were talking about the getting to learn more about the members and their interests and their skills, possibly, Jim, the new social the Digital Life platform has that feature in it where we can take interest and skills inventory of the members, and then we get that good graphical representation of very interesting things that graphs can give us. So I'm wondering, we already have the RChain Mattermost. Is there any way we could start setting up that feature for the RChain Mattermost, and several of us start playing with it to use that as a way to talk about what Nick is doing?
Yeah, we could, I'm sure we could do that. We have, I think the problem at the moment is that we're working with the as-is process. We've got the as-is, most of the membership is engaged through a know your customer process, which resides in Discord. So that's, if you like, where most of the home of the wider membership is. And actually, and below that, there's a number of members who aren't on Discord who just have email addresses. So Ian is the custodian of all of that membership process and of those addresses, if you like, the membership database. So we're starting with a basic, just check again, guys. A lot of you have come and gone in the past year or so. Who actually are we now? So we've got a draft document, a draft survey template. I can share that with you now. I'll put this in the chat. Bear with me a moment, and it will be good to try that in Mattermost, to echo that template in Mattermost, and see what sort of stuff that we could, what sort of insights we could gain from that, because we haven't really thought about how we'd report on this yet, but we're just saying these are the sorts of questions that we might ask. So bear with me a moment, and I'll try and find that document. Where are we?
Okay, I added on
Carry on.
and the Android app that Steve offered a resource on. I don't know if anyone can help take notes in here. We had the I'm just randomly adding here Ian holds membership data. And this is really a prototype in the collab at the present. I don't know, did you find that, Steve? Nick? You're on mute, Nick.
Sorry, coming back now. Sorry. Okay, here's that. That's where we got to with a rough survey template. We were going to start that with some communications preferences, ask the members what their comms preferences were as well, so that we had an idea of where they were at the moment. And we could ask them things about Mattermost in there as well. We could say, you know, are you a Mattermost user? Do you have, would you be keen on? I don't know, that may be something we might also ask them in the comms preferences. But Ian and I are discussing this at the moment, and we're going to talk through this at Governance Committee tomorrow. So, any other topics?
I was glad that Ian asked. I'm sorry. It was Alan asked Greg in the regular meeting about the ladle activities, and so I hope to hear Greg speak on that next hour. But has anyone heard anything about the ladle? The ladle activities as far as maybe the talk or the conference he was planning, the seminar?
No, I'm fairly new to that. Is that logic as distributed law? Is that right? No.
Yes, and it's our Jim, help me with this. It's our type system.
Oh, okay.
For rolling, which won't be available, at mainnet, but it should start appearing, after that.
So this
And
is
it's very
correct by construction. It's important for that, is it? For basically ensure things are provably correct.
Yes, that's a good way of looking at it, I'd say.
Okay. No, I've not heard anything. I just saw the announcements for it.
And he also said in the meeting that there had been, I don't know if they were joking or not, that there had been some new research in regards to the ladle. Nick, you're muted if you're speaking.
Okay, sorry, I'm coughing. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
But we had talked about this last week, and I thought I'd just touch on it again.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, anything else? We good to go?
I think we're good.
Chidinudu, are we okay?
Yeah, we are okay. We are good. Yeah.
So did I? And Oanata? I'm not sure if I'm reading the names right. I'm very sorry if I'm making a mess of this.
Yeah, we are good. Yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to add?
Good.
Okay. Cool. All right, then we'll go with.
You pronounce my name quite okay.
Okay.
Yeah. One topic will come up at our 2 p.m. New York time. Meeting tomorrow will be the January rewards, which for the collab. I guess we're just announcing that, which some may be interested in.
That's the collab meeting on tomorrow.
Yes, the collab work study, 2 p.m. New York time tomorrow. One topic will be the rewards for January, and then we will continue work on standing up the Digital Life portal for RChain. And I suppose I could do a little demo with that, whatever.
Well, that's for tomorrow, is it? Okay, that's great. Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, Jim, is that on the calendar? Hello.
Yeah, it's on.
Hello.
Yep, it's on the calendar. On the RChain calendar. Wait, or
all right.
Yeah, right. The new RChain is on the RChain calendar for tomorrow. Normal at 2 o'clock, and at 4 we have a second one at 4 o'clock, which is supposed to be the R-Node session, but we haven't had anyone interested in R-Node running lately. Probably be devoted, the 4 p.m. would probably be devoted to Rolang, probably development of the administration and member directories to be used in conjunction with Dan's voting for Robot.
And Jim, didn't you work on that this morning in a session I saw in the channel?
Well, I was working on it this morning, primarily making some fixes to the inbox implementation. So the member and admin directory and the mailbox structure are the two improvements to the voting system that we're working on at this time.
But you're covering that on the call tomorrow, are you, Jim?
Right, tomorrow at 4 p.m. New York time.
Okay, cool. So if we want to, we can talk through in more detail on that call then, if we pick that call up to cover that.
Right.
Okay. Right then. If there's no other topics, then should we go to the top of the list then? Are there any announcements or anything that we need to make? All I've got is that the RChain Governance Committee second meeting is tomorrow at it's 1700 UTC. Not sure what time, New York time that is, but yeah. So that's tomorrow. It's in the calendar now. There's all the details are now in the calendar for regular meetings. They're weekly at the moment. So, any other announcements? If we come now to then the agenda topics, then identity strategy. I just mentioned this one. I think we talked about this on a previous call. And Jim, you've got lots of material under this on BYOD, haven't you? The BYOID, the bring your own identity thread and area there. I'm really keen on if you like being clear on what the RChain platform's identity strategy is. And all I said last time was I got a bit lost. Because lots of stuff came in with various frameworks. We had the digital, we had the creative passport and mycelia thing. We've got Life ID. And I was quite keen on all of that stuff around DIDs and DID auth. And then we've got Greg's paper on, a very insightful paper on identity via channels. The only point I was making, it would be good if there was an active channel somewhere where we talked out and really documented what our identity strategy is there, because I just think that's an important area for any platform. And maybe it's as much about what we don't do and what we leave to the identity partners and app providers to do. So we say what we don't do. As much as what we will do and do on the thing. So that was the only thing that I had to say there.
Yeah, the connection between all these various identities is self-sovereign identity, where there's a DID directory, and where in principle, a DID directory includes everything, all your devices, all your services,
your robots, everything.
Decentralized identifier. And the identifier, the DID document identifies the services that the identity provides. And it could be any of these things, any of these options that people are developing. Okay, what they are for me today with respect to the RChain voting system, it's a Discord identity associated with a toy public key that is using Dan's demo public key strategy, which ultimately would be replaced using the RSign application to sign messages, which we're not doing yet. We say that this Discord identity has been vetted as a member, is this a public key, and that's what all identity is. But all of these things that an identity does are part of the social ledger, which is all ultimately personal information, or
Yeah.
belongs to the, it belongs to the individual or the team or the collective. And so, when we think about authentication, that's one thing, but it comes down to everything being part of identity. So
yeah, exactly. It's a huge area.
All we have to do for now is make it self-sovereign, so that a person can use any identity system they want.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. I think that's a good point. So go on, Gary. Sorry.
Yes, Jim. Could you relate what you were just talking about in this idea of the DID? I tend to see this identity problem from the nuts and bolts level, and so this is why Greg's paper gave me such reassurance. But Sheldrake over in Dig Life sort of pointed out something in my thinking about the idea of agency. And I didn't hear you use the word agency when you were talking just then. And so I'm wondering, how do you pull this higher level concept of agency into what you're talking about?
Well, what you do and what you can do is your agency to some extent, or exhibits your agency. In terms of the development that we're doing now in the voting system, well, really, it's the user locker. Okay, where we give people capabilities, and their capabilities represent their agency.
And I guess there's a whole load of assumed process and protocol around the way that those agencies can interact with each other, and convention associated with that, which differs between the different ecosystems of identity. So the DID is very, very much a very, very lowest common denominator identifier, which, as you say, points to different identity resolutions.
It's a decentralized directory. So that, the DID collab RChain member can be different from RChain member whatever. It's a it's a federated system. I mean, if we become the home of collab then anything below that or anything in that area is something that that is added to the tree where a member is allowed to add things.
Yeah. So I don't think we're going to solve all of this here. It's just, my question was more about where is that conversation, this more detailed conversation, going to be held? Is the right channel for that in your BYOD thing, or is it something where you maybe Chris Boscolo is going to be handling that with the rest of with some of the other ecosystem partners who have a stake in identity? What's the dog's name? What's the dog's name, Jim?
Felix.
It's Felix. He's a great dog. I'm sorry, Felix, but I'm sorry about it. It isn't the most interesting subject. I know. Biscuit.
For my satisfaction right now, I see the conversation occurring in Greg's identity and agency channel, and I wish more of it would happen there, because I think that's ground zero for the discussion. But again, that's at this nuts and bolts, low level, rolling implementation of Greg's.
It's some fundamental theory there, which is really exciting. I think what I struggle with in that paper is if you like, position is what the roadmap is. Some great thinking there, but you can't.
Yeah.
Could we use that paper right now? Some of the ideas that right now as the basis of an identity system.
You can use that paper right now, in my understanding, because if you're following the discussion between Dan Connolly and whoever else will talk to him there in that channel, my thinking is he's hot on the heels of implementing Greg's algorithm.
My feeling is that what we're really talking about here is a identity that goes far beyond our immediate needs, and more difficult than what we need initially. What I've been looking for, and I think Chris B was sort of going to coordinate this effort, is all of these different people developing identity for RChain are employing the same standards, basically. But the standards only go so far. Okay, they give you a framework and say, well, this is the kind of thing you can do. And we want to do things, we want to use the standard in a standard way, so to speak.
Exactly.
So that our applications can talk to one another.
Exactly. So I
have not been able to find these discussions.
He has got some stuff, some really good stuff, in his architecture paper for Life ID. So in there, he's got an architecture, some stuff which he sent me, which was, I think it was a developer guide he was working on. And he's got some good material in there, which suggests moving from the standards to components and shared code, which could be part of the platform. And I'm not saying it's strategically, I'm sure that would be replaced by something more advanced in the longer term, but at least in the short term, there's some good. I thought we had some good building blocks there, which you could be proposed for at least the RChain ecosystem.
And this is in the white paper. Where is this?
No, it was a thread I had with Chris a while ago when we were talking. We were talking about the DID resolution and DID auth, and whether and how his app was going to be implemented on the RChain platform. What if you like the API was, where did resolution was going to occur. And we thought the idea, really cool thing to do would be to say that Life ID and RChain had the only DID native DID resolution capability, unlike many of the other blockchain platforms there, which did that in a rather roundabout and clumsy way. So he said, I said, it'd be good if we draw a picture of that. He said, I've got some pictures already. And it was in his developer's guide. But I think he's now so busy on the course, on the core system, which is the right thing for him to be busy on, that he hasn't had time to do any of that. But that sort of architecture stuff, both what we're doing in the short term, in the medium term, and longer term, I'd just like to see something like that for identity, and there being a conversation around it. But that's just the personal thing.
Yeah, I haven't found that yet. We're still a ways away from using the DID document. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a decentralized directory. So I just create a directory in RChain, and I store in it DID document.
Yeah,
Okay, I don't, you know, the only thing that's important is that the contents of the DID document are compatible with other people's, and that's the specification I have not seen. And that's the thing that, you know, I feel we need to be cooperating on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, so that was really all I had to say on identity. Anything else?
Yeah, we're 2/3 of the way through here.
How are we doing for time?
Move on.
Okay, let's move on then. So voting apps then. I'll just say governance committee. What we're doing there is there's two main areas. Probably the earliest thing we need to do on the governance committee is this question of the member survey. So this is the membership survey, which we'd like to move on with. Jim, thank you very much for your suggestion of Lime survey and others around there. Ian is looking at these and is coming out, and I think he's close to having something ready, using the idea of, so we'll host something to basically send out a survey document. But obviously, if we wanted to do another survey, we might look at doing it, let's say, properly on chain, using some of our own code, or maybe using one of these survey apps and then putting something underneath it that puts, you know, results securely on chain if we need to go to that extent. But at the moment, that's one use that we're using it for, that type of tool in the discussions on the governance committee. The other use is related to a process. I think it's the first process which the governance committee is defining or hoping to approve shortly, and that's what's called the topics of discussion, member topics of discussion. So it's, you know, last year we had what was called IOB4 at the membership meeting. And IOB4 said, you know, the membership needs a voice at the board level, and if the membership wants something discussed or wants the decision challenged, it needs to have the right. The membership as a whole needs to have like a democratic right to see what decisions are being made and to express an opinion on those critical decisions, particularly if they were had a material impact on the membership themselves. So the IOB4 asked for a mechanism to do that, and then it also asked for some criteria of what, if you like, significant meant. You know, what was a mission critical or financially significant event. So this process called PR001, it's basically the topics of discussion process, suggests a protocol for doing that, and the protocol being: here's the topic I'd like to talk about, title of the topic, brief description of it, what the proposal of this topic is, if it is a proposal, some of what's been considered already, some of the pros and cons of what is being proposed, something about the impact of that, whether that's in financial terms or in effort terms or whatever, and then an indication of support for that process. And that's where, in the interim, we're suggesting we use a Discord, just a Discord channel. So you post your topic of discussion, your proposed topic of discussion, in a Discord channel, in a relevant Discord channel to the topic area. So it could be, so if it was related to, for example, compensation committee or audit and finance or something like that, you post your proposed topic of discussion in there. The format is just a series of headings, so you could either do it as just a Discord message with those headings in it, or a link to a GDoc with those headings in it. So it doesn't really matter, but just there's a protocol for what you should have in it, what constitutes an adequate description of something to be discussed at board level. And then in that meeting, you basically ask the other members in that channel to express their support and engagement in that topic, using the sorts of things that you've been using, Jim, in the collab and in Mattermost around the emojis, so the emoji voting type stuff. So basically you get a basic suggestion there as to whether there is support for this, and based on that, the member proposing that to be discussed at the board takes that forward to the board level, and there should be a role on the board now, which is the membership representative, I think, or a member representative, and that member representative then would table that at the board level for discussion on behalf of the member and put that forward. So that is what we're hoping to see as the process. There's the document for that, the proposed document. I can send you a link to that in the meantime. So I'll shut up now and find that link and put link to that document and put it in the. That's a draft, the topic of discussion process, yeah. So really, that's all we've got on that. I'll just. Any questions on that? I mean, we will be covering this in more detail tomorrow. We'll be discussing it again to try and finalize
I don't have
it
it on my calendar. I guess I have the one from last week.
Oh, okay. No, it's Ian. It's set up It's set up. I think it quotes properly in the overall RChain calendar. Ian said he'd done that. I'll send you
the Discord channel.
Oh, it's in the Discord channel. Yes, if you look in the governance channel, there's a link to it there. But it's also in the co-op standing meetings channel now. So it should be in there as a standing meeting, regular meeting. So with the same Zoom number every week now. Let me just.
Well, that meeting, is it set up to allow regular members to attend, or is that not the format?
Now, what we've got is we've got 5 core members of the committee, if you like, quotes, voting members of the committee, and then it's completely open. Anybody else can turn up and listen and contribute. So, Ian, he's not a standard member of the committee, but he'll be talking about the member survey at tomorrow's meeting on the agenda there. So, if you look in the governance channel, there's a on Discord, there is a there's the minute. There's a link to the minutes on there, and to the invite for the meeting as well. So, so that's really what we're doing on the membership profile performer. I sent that earlier, and membership data. Yes, Ian's got all the membership data, and obviously we're looking after that. We don't want to. We did think about using things like SurveyMonkey temporarily, but we decided that wasn't a good idea because they're externally hosted. We don't want to send our membership data outside. That would look bad. And we're also wondering about Google Forms as well, because if we're using email effectively as Gmail as the transport mechanism for it, again, that's not great for sending potentially sensitive data.
One thing I like about the Mattermost way of gaining the information from the members is it's all voluntary, and you see how your data is going to be displayed, right there when you do it. I mean, there's no motivation to do it other than, to see the graphical representation of the connection between interests and projects and skills and other things.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think what we're doing here is very much a sort of it's a first off, fire something out to get a snapshot, And I think we should really talk about what we see as the long-term platform for privacy respecting sharing of member information on there. So we're going to go as far as asking members' preferences about that. So we will ask that when we send this out there and saying, for contact preferences. But I think in the longer term, we should do this properly. What we need, the reason we're doing this is just so that we get a better handle on who are the major interest groups in the membership, so that we can get people together, from those different interest groups to have a conversation about governance. Because what we're finding, we're having conversations about governance saying, oh, should we be a producer co-op, or should we be a consumer co-op, or should we be a multi-interest? And it was always, well, it depends. And then we thought, well, hey, look, let's try and find out and sit down with our member constituency representatives, to have those conversations about what would be the right governance structure to have in the longer term. So it's really focused on asking some basic questions so that we can do some of that governance work. But I think your point about it being an important thing to get right in terms of member profiling and respecting identity information, again, going back to the identity topic, I think that's really important for us as a platform. Okay, so next one was Jim, robot prototyping in Colab. That was something that, by the way, if I haven't said so already, that's something that's really cool. I really like this stuff that's been done there. I think actually it's already a really good, proof of concept to show that, it works. And I think, in some ways, I think it's the focus should be on, well, what are we really trying to do with it?
Well,
and then,
yes, Nick, you're right. It works, and there are so many things that open up to us now as we look at this thing, that I think a lot of us are having overstimulation syndrome as they keep imagining things they could do with robot. But the magical thing is, it gets a whole lot better when we get ladled.
Yeah. Well, that would be interesting to see. So I would like to know more about that. So I've only just skimmed the surface of it, and because I think that's the big differentiator as the platform. I think that is what is going to help sell it, and that's an area of focus that I think we should have as if you like a unique feature of the platform.
I guess the key thing about robot that I want to bring out is the idea was to be built as a cooperation in the collab, and what robot allows is us to jointly program live applications on an RChain node, which we wanted to make a shard, but we waiting for a more stable node where we can define Roland contracts, and we can define macros that generate Roland. Like we can have, this is an example of defining an add macro, takes X and Y, and then I can write a program that does add X, Y, and it runs on the R node program. And if I echo out that, I can see it. It does. The macro simply does a text substitution of whatever you put in for $X and whatever you in for $Y, and that's what it puts in. It puts in there. Like here, it puts in 111 plus 222, whatever. On I'm not sure why I'm showing that, but that enables the interface where we can put in commands very simply, and I don't.
Well, there is something cool about having a key as command line interface like that. You know, in a communications platform, a communications tool like Discord or.
Okay, so here we we look at the vote results on an election. We use a macro here. Now, the next thing we can do pretty easily is we can go to the shared host where we are working, robot.net, and we can edit the server.js, and we can add, when we get a message from Discord, we can see what kind of command it is. I don't know, I'm looking through a lot of code here, but like the define command, and then we can write the code that the define command does here. Now, if we already have a macro that does the voting and we want to define a new language of commands that executed it, it would be very easy to add it to the repertoire of the commands that robot understands. So we could have, a vote results command or whatever, instead of evaluating a Rolang macro. And if we look at an echo of dollar vote results of flavors, which we executed here, and it gave us the result of the election and the count of what was taken. The echo will show us the Rolang that it generates from that. And we can see that what was my point? My point was that
so you've echoed the execution of that.
Yeah, this
vote
is
results function or macro,
right,
and it's showing you the code that's behind it.
Yeah, I'm also saying here that this command here becomes, part of the language of robot, which we can simplify, make a different command if we want. And in the case of developing the Android app to do the voting, the Android app only needs to use the Discord API to talk to robot, send it the command to do the voting, okay, then get the results back, and display, then render the results at once to the screen.
Now that's interesting, because at the end of the call, earlier, with the Europe call, we were talking. There was a link put up to votes. What's it called? Vote. There's not net vote. Well, there's net votes. We've got govern, and there's another. There is an Android. There's an app out there already called. I've forgotten what it's called now. There's a link to it. We've got, but there's a nice.
Doesn't run on RChain.
No, it doesn't run on it, but that's the point. You know, they're getting all sorts of criticism. If you look at their articles and you look at their website, look at the app, they're getting all sorts of criticism for not having, you know, a robust infrastructure around validation, for being a permissioned network, and therefore there being a trust issue. So again, if a conversation with them about how we could offer a platform for that, and if we can show the richness of the capability we've got, you know, to do stuff underneath their app, right? This is API crafting,
right? And we're at the beginning where we're prototyping, we're demonstrating basic capabilities, and what we need to do is encourage more people to participate in the process of demonstrating different things.
Yeah.
For example, collecting sentiment, handling different scales for such as
like, strongly like, disagree, strongly agree. But there are guys out there who've been doing this for years with centralized apps. So and the ones who are enlightened are probably NetVote and Govern and these other guys who are doing it. So we should get these guys around the table, reach out to them, and have a conversation about this. Look, you guys know all about the business domain of voting and all the things that you can do and should be done, and things that work well and don't work well. And we are really good at a trusted, distributed, or trustless distributed platform to build the scalable platform to build this on. And by the way, we've got some great stuff going on around the way we could build an API for you. Let's talk. So, I think we could have a good conversation with these people. But I just worry about us building an app to try and which won't look as good as their stuff, and the Labour Party, trivially would say, well, there's a much better app I can get from those guys over there. And they'll just say, we'll say, but, ours is decentralized and massively scalable. And they say, well, it doesn't matter. We like their one better. So it might be better for us to choose partners to work with rather than, although that's again an issue of a strategy thing. It'd be good to talk to, again, I'm trying to ping Steve to talk about that, what he thinks is the best thing to do. But we'll have that conversation in the Christian Wish meeting.
And, I think we should, his window is fading. I expected him to contact me. I don't think I have his Discord address. I don't know if he uses Discord.
What, Steve?
Yeah.
No, I think I think he's mostly on. I use Gmail for him, or use Google Hangouts. Well, he pings me on Google Hangouts often.
Maybe
he doesn't use Discord.
Create a separate. Okay, well, we need to coordinate on this and move it forward, because he said his window is short and it's time for the debrief, so we have to go.
Oh yeah, go on. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't do a very good job on the timing, but there we go. Okay, thank you.